I think that Republicans are in a lot of trouble for 28. He's going to cut the taxes for the rich, and he's going to do everything Israel wanted. So I think that Trump has effectively betrayed the movement.
It feels like a dam has burst in this country where we're actually allowed to talk about them without fear.
If things keep going the way they are, if the economy doesn't get much better, I don't know that Republicans are going to be able to make a case that people are better off 4 years after Trump.
Do you want to spend your life with a woman?
No, I mean, the idea of that sounds annoying. To me, Joseph Stalin is an extremely compelling figure.
Nick Fuentes, do you think you want to become president one day? Folks, today is a sit-down interview with Nick Fuentes, and he is a controversial man. And this channel is no stranger of chasing controversial subjects. I find it interesting, fascinating, and worthwhile. And some people might be saying, why even platform a guy like this? I believe in platforming pretty much everybody. I will talk to Nick Fuentes today, AOC tomorrow, Antifa the next, and Patreon Front the day after that. I believe that the way to explore the battleground of ideas is to talk to people and have solid conversations with great questions that pierce behind the scenes. And with Nick today, there were some things I agreed with a lot. There's other ideas of his that I thought were pretty hilarious and that we laughed about it and had disagreements. And I think that's what a productive conversation does. You should not go into a conversation agreeing with everything someone says, or you're probably not thinking critically. So we are on the exploration of ideas. We will be fearless on this channel, talking to anybody, right, left, and anywhere in between, because we are on the quest for truth and we want to learn. That's what we're here to do. So join us today as we talk to Nick Fuentes, and this is going to be a series that we continue to do with conversations that I find worthwhile and interesting. So now let's go to Nick Fuentes' living room and talk to the man. So this is the Nick Fuentes interview. Thank you for joining me in your own house.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of things I want to get into you, from Israel to the current state of affairs with Trump, all the hot button issues that everyone is very excited to talk about. And it feels like a dam has burst in this country where we're actually allowed to talk about them without fear. But first, I want the people to get to know you a little bit better. What we were talking about off camera, I noticed your pantry is full of Mountain Dew stacks. So you're a sober guy.
Oh, right. Yeah.
No weed, no alcohol, but Mountain Dew passes the...
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I like to eat, and I don't know, I like that stuff. But for me, I don't not drink for health reasons or not do weed. For me, it's more of a mental thing. And I know you're kind of giving me a hard time about the junk food, and I know that's not great for your brain health, but obviously alcohol and weed, they do alter your state of mind and state of your consciousness, and I'm very averse to anything like that. So I guess the junk food, that's my one vice.
Yeah, I guess that was the other thing driving up here I was trying to figure out, is like, you seem like you live almost like a Puritan in some ways. Like, I'm saving myself for marriage, I don't do any drugs, I don't watch porn, I don't do this, I don't do that. So is it fair to say sugar is your vice?
Yeah, I mean, I don't look at it like a vice. I don't know, is that for health reasons, do you think?
Yeah, when I look at your pantry, I think, what the hell is this guy doing right now?
What should my pantry have? Like what, like eggs?
Water, black coffee, pasture-raised eggs, peanut butter with no sugar, meat, ground beef, steaks.
Don't you think that's like a new phenomenon, though?
I guess it depends on what you want your body to perform for. Like, I like to be in a way that if I had to go on the run, if I had to fight somebody, I'm hopefully ready to go. If I had to live in the woods for a little bit. I'm not a high performance athlete. I'm not running and fighting and hiking. You're a guy that you've had a house. You've had people come to your house to try and get you.
Yeah, I'll just kill him with the gun, though, or something.
I suppose that's the trump card.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the ultimate play.
Another thing I want to understand more is you've been debanked.
Yes.
Deplatformed. Do you believe anyone should be deplatformed?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think anybody would say there's a reasonable amount of deplatforming, and it's helpful to understand the history of it, because when social media first came around, it was unheard of that people were permanently suspended, their likeness, their name, and if you remember, the first people that got banned on Twitter was ISIS in like 2013, 2014. This was after the Arab Spring, after the advent of Facebook and Twitter. The first people that were catching the bans, it was ISIS posting their like beheading videos. And so I think that's a good guide if you're committing acts of terrorism. And I also think if you're calling for violence, I think if you're calling for insurrection, riots, harassment, that sort of thing, I think that that kind of content should be removed. At the same time, I also don't know that people should be banned forever. Because how long has social media even been around? Maybe they started banning people 10 years ago. Why is it a life sentence? That's sort of how I feel. I got banned on YouTube when I was like 22 or 21. And so what, I'm banned from YouTube until I'm 100 years old? That's sort of insane, an 80-year sentence. So social media needs to kind of figure out what it is that we consider permissible and then what the penalty should be. But I think violence is where I would draw the line.
Interesting. I'm surprised that you would support deplatforming at all, just given your experience with it. What was the official reason that you were given for being kicked off of YouTube?
They told me it was hate speech.
And did they give you a particular quote or timestamp?
No, not even a particular video. They just banned me. They said, this is hateful content, it violates the rules, and so they took me off. And that was the same way on everything, on Twitter, on Instagram, everything I got banned from, they never gave me the actual reason.
How big was your platform at the time that you got banned?
On YouTube, I had 76,000 subscribers. Twitter, I had 145,000 followers. Instagram, I think I maybe had 50,000, I'm not sure. But I mean, it was smaller, but it was growing. And of course, 5 years ago, I think it was maybe the proportionality was different.
And was it almost like a domino effect where one right after another started to come after you?
No, they were kind of spaced out. I mean, I got banned in 2020 from YouTube because my show was really blowing up. That was when I first started getting 10,000 live viewers, concurrent viewers in a night. I got banned there. A year later, after January 6th, I got banned from a bunch of stuff all at once. 6 months after that, I got banned on Twitter. So it was kind of like a graduated thing. It was progressive.
There was a clip from you in January 6th where you kind of said something along the lines of like, go in there or let's go. Do you think that might have been one of the reasons you got to platform? Because you said violence, like go get them.
No, I think what did it, because that video didn't really come out until later. It didn't get a ton of attention until later. The reason this is a theory, but when January 6th happens, everybody doesn't know this or forgets this, there was somebody live streaming inside the Capitol. And there was a screenshot from the live stream that everybody started to say was me. It was like some guy, super low resolution, and it could have looked like anybody because it was like 5 pixels. His face was like 10 pixels. And they said, that's Nick Fuentes. He's in Nancy Pelosi's office. And this went like super viral. It got like millions of views. And the guy was wearing a different outfit. I was wearing a suit. He was wearing like a jacket and a scarf. But everybody said it was me. And I think that's actually what got me banned because it was like a huge case of mistaken identity.
Okay. And when you say debanked, like literally you could not open a bank account.
Well, it's not that I couldn't open one. It's that if I did, they would ban me from the bank.
Even a little credit union?
I didn't do a credit union, but local banks in Chicago I did. I did like Inland Bank. I don't know if you ever heard of them.
Fifth Third's another local?
Fifth Third, yeah. So, because I was at Bank of America, they banned me. I went over to, I think it was Chase. They banned me there. We had a company account at US Bank. They banned us there. So then I was going more local and they kept banning me. And eventually it did stop about a couple of years ago. I've been at the same bank for a couple of years now.
Did the banks give you any reason?
They said it was reputation. They said that it's a reputational risk.
So Epstein and Benjamin Netanyahu can bank with some of these people, but not you.
Yeah. Netanyahu, Epstein, that's not a bad reputation. P. Diddy, that's a good reputation, but me, I couldn't have a couple bucks in a checking account.
So how did you function? I mean, paying rent, paying the car, doing normal everyday things that a bank allows you to do. What was that like?
Well, what really sucked is, I always was able to park the money at a checking account for a short time before they would ban me. The real trouble came in with all the clerical stuff because it's like, I'm at Bank of America, I get banned. I have to get all the money out. I have to go and open a new bank account and move it there. But as everybody knows, you have all your recurring subscriptions and charges. And so my credit score took like a 200-point hit because all this stuff was on my other bank account. So like my student loans, my bills, like that created real problems for me.
Why do you think the banks and big social media companies went after you? What made you so dangerous or so reputationally hazardous that they said, we got to get rid of this guy?
Well, it's important to understand that there's a pretext for all these things. And by that, I mean, they'll give you a fake reason why they do these things. Like, so for example, I'm on the federal no-fly list. What's the reason they gave? They said I made a joke about hurting a flight attendant because I was mad about a plane or something. I get debanked. They say reputational risk. I get banned on Instagram. They say it's hate speech. They always give you a pretext. Here's the excuse. The real reason is that if you are politically right-wing, if you have these controversial views, people don't know how this works. There are nonprofit think tanks that get paid lots of money to basically follow you around and harass you. So from the time...
Online or in person?
Online, okay. But also sometimes in person. When I'm 18 years old, there's a group called Media Matters, Right Wing Watch. These are nonprofits. They sort of serve as watchdog groups. Mm-hmm. They watch the show, and then they identify, oh, this guy's very right wing. He's pro-white, like he has pro-white politics. He's a very fanatical Christian. And they'll say this guy is an extremist. And what they'll do then is they'll pay somebody to watch the show, and every time you say something off color, something that sounds bad, they clip it, they post it, and they say, deplatform this guy, arrest this guy needs to pay. This is what happens for years. And so people don't really understand that not everybody has their own personal paparazzi following them around like this, harassing them, and literally looking for ways to shut you down, looking for ways to shut down your platform, your cash flow, looking for ways to hurt you with the law, with the federal government, or in a civil litigation. That's what happened to Alex Jones. Alex Jones said that he didn't believe Sandy Hook happened the way it happened. And the Sandy Hook parents sued him. Now, what do you think happened there? People that already hated Alex Jones because of his politics, they were looking for a plaintiff because they knew if we could find somebody that has a case against Jones, we can sue him and shut down his whole business. And that's exactly what they did. And so it's political harassment and targeting, which is really what all that comes down to.
Now, just to play devil's advocate, I get I think being pro-white is totally fine. But do you think maybe they looked at you were actually anti-black, anti-women? Like, do you think more it's the anti that they may have had a problem with?
No, because they don't distinguish those things. I mean, let's say, for example, one of the big issues I talk about is immigration. Mm-hmm. This country has had so much immigration that it's literally changing the demographics of America. We used to be 90% white 60 years ago. Now we're maybe 60% white. That's a huge change. America was one way. It's going to be a different way in 50 years. Now, if you talk about that, they say that's a conspiracy theory. That's the Great Replacement conspiracy theory. And if you talk about it, you're a white nationalist, and it's because you hate non-white people and you don't think they should be in the country. And it's like, my dad's half Mexican. I grew up in Chicago. This city is a third white. Obviously, it's not like we hate non-whites or we don't want non-whites to live here. It's a question of, do we want this policy to keep going? Do we want America to fundamentally change in that way in a short time? And for me, the answer was no, but they make no distinction. Are you pro-white, anti-everybody else? Are you saying these things for a legitimate reason or an illegitimate reason? There's no
is there any
distinction.
part of you that would say you're a provocateur, or is this all genuine from the heart feelings?
I don't think I'm a provocateur because if you watch my show, it's really just a funny show. I have an edgy sense of humor like everybody in my generation does. And I think if you're really being honest, everybody can tell when I'm kidding, when I'm not kidding, when I'm making a joke, when I'm being serious. And so my intention when I do a show is actually not to say the most provocative thing. I say what I believe, and sometimes I'm doing a joke or I'm doing a bit, and if you only ever see the jokes divorced from the context, you say, this guy's an asshole. Like all this guy's doing is trying to be shocking. And I'm really not. I just kind of have a funny demeanor, I guess.
I do agree you have some hilarious moments, but there was a moment from the Tucker Carlson interview I wanted to ask you about.
Yeah.
You mentioned Stalin. You're a fan of his work?
Yes.
Was that serious or a joke?
That wasn't a joke. But, you know, it's like anything else. I love history and I love stories. And to me, Joseph Stalin is an extremely compelling figure. I would say more, you'd be surprised to hear this, than Hitler. Everybody pegs me as like a Hitler guy. I'll tell you, and I'm not saying this to pander, I'm not saying this, you know, because I care about what you think of me. I really don't even know that much about Hitler. I never found Hitler to be that interesting. I think that there's narratives about Hitler that are interesting. In America, if you talk a certain way about certain issues, they say, you're a Nazi, you're Hitler. So it's interesting in that way. But for me, Stalin is the far more compelling figure. And I say that because, you know, while everybody focuses on Hitler, Stalin is a person who takes Russia, which is the most backwards country in Europe at the beginning of the 20th century, serfs and peasants and you know, just all around immiseration and poverty. He takes a country like this, and by the time he dies, it's a nuclear empire. It's a global superpower. It's like the most unbelievable story in the history of mankind. And so I don't think he's a good person. He's an evil person. He's one of the villains of history. But in terms of his effects, he's an effective ruler. And I think that's interesting. So
I think where people could say, I wonder if Nick Fuentes is dangerous or not, is like when you talk about a guy like Joseph Stalin with admiration, and yeah, he did a comeback story for Russia, but in the process, tens of millions of people starved to death. Like it was really rough. If you ever read Soviet history, just the fear of secret police, not being able to eat, there's so many things that made Russia a horrible place to live. Are you willing, like if you want any sort of political position in the future, are you willing to turn around a country, have a lot of people suffer and die to achieve the comeback story? No,
and the difference I would say is that a figure like Stalin was possessed by ideology. He was a real communist. And so the mass murders of the collectivization, when they took all the agriculture, they took the grain, that was the forced famine. And he did this because he was a true believer in communist ideology. He believed that to achieve this, we have to, you know, to make the omelet, we got to crack some eggs, and not to be cute, but that's how he saw this. Me, I don't even consider myself really ideological. I'm a Christian. I'm America first. I would say I'm a political pragmatist. And so as far as the American comeback, I don't want to see people suffer in the pursuit of some ideology. People suffering is a problem in and of itself, you understand? And especially as a Christian, I say that. So no, I totally repudiate communism and even National Socialism for that matter. I'm Catholic, I'm Christian. So if I had any ruling ideology, it would be that.
So, okay, just in democratic socialism, we've had some recent news flashes. In New York, Mondami just won. What do you think of that for the future of New York?
I think it's terrible, you know, and Zohran Mamdani, I get why he's popular. It's obvious because he's talking about the prices of things, and that's the crisis that we're in. It's that for the first time in maybe 40 years, we have significant inflation, and a city like New York is the least affordable city in America, especially in like Manhattan, let's say. And he goes around telling everybody, we're going to make the bus free, and, you know, we're going to make rent, we're going to freeze the rents and all this kind of stuff. I actually just don't think that's good economics. So I don't think democratic socialism has a good track record there. I don't think it's going to work. I think, yeah, go ahead.
Are there other countries like Norway, Finland, Sweden that you would say are successful versions of democratic socialism?
I would say yes, they were. They're getting worse. But these countries like Norway, Sweden, you got to understand, these countries had small populations without a huge military, and it was completely homogeneous. And I know that's the usual rebuttal, but it's just true that if you have a country where everybody looks at each other like family, and there's sort of a culture that they're not going to take advantage of or abuse the system, and it's small and it's manageable, that's doable. But the United States is an empire of 350 million people, and it's so diverse. ethnically, racially, religiously, and I think we all know that the system doesn't work very good. We have a lot of welfare, and there's tons of abuse. It's not well administered. So I don't think more of that is the answer for us.
Do you think multiculturalism can work in America, or are you vehemently against it?
Well, we have multiculturalism, and in some ways we always have. People, and I know my fans are not going to love to hear that. When did we not have multiculturalism? Okay, like 400 years ago when they were at Jamestown or something, or 300 years ago when they had the colonies. But shortly after that, you did have a variety of cultures. You had Chinese people coming and building the railroads. You had Mexicans in Texas. And it wasn't widespread. You had mostly white people, some non-white people. But very soon after, you had the Germans come in, then the Italians, the Ellis Islanders. So you've always had a lot of different cultures. And I think that can work as long as you acknowledge that it's not all positive. That yes, there's benefits, which is that, like, I love Chicago. I love that you can get good Mexican food, like the food, this sort of thing. But of course, the negatives are that the social trust goes down. You
think that's just inherent to multiculturalism?
Oh, of course, necessarily it is.
Like tribal principles that just suggest that if you're not like me, it's going to be harder for me to trust you.
Inherently, because we speak different languages. We have different values. There's misunderstandings, differences in sense of humor, body language, customs. I find there's cultural differences between, for example, I'm half Italian, quarter Mexican, quarter Irish. There's cultural differences between me and like a WASP that came from the same neighborhood. A white person, like let's say Anglo-Saxon Protestant from LaGrange Park, where I grew up, there's cultural differences between us. Like, you bring an open bottle of wine to a party, something you've already opened. An Italian would never do that. That's a cultural difference. So you have misunderstandings, and of course, the greater degree of separation, the greater the misunderstandings. And then that has a tendency towards conflict. So as long as we understand the downsides, when we take care of that, then I think we could have the upsides.
I think what Mamdani has really spoken to that the Republicans are not is affordability in this country. There is a crisis. There's so many, I talk to people on the phone every single day. Like I talk to a private equity guy in New York. Him and his wife bring in $250,000 a year and still are living paycheck to paycheck because of their mortgage, because of daycare. They have 2 kids. That's unbelievable. You would have thought growing up, like if I make 6 figures, I'm so good. I can have a butler in the front of my house. Like I have the American dream. I'm okay. And when you have people that even the 6-figure earners are like, this is not good. I'm not making a dent in my savings. I don't think the Republicans are speaking to that. And in fact, Trump is kind of gaslighting us, saying grocery prices are going down and the tariffs are really good for this country. And I think they're really missing the mark because the average American starts to let go of ideology when just surviving becomes their primary concern.
I totally agree. And I think that's, we're filming this the day after the off-year elections, which were a couple days ago. And I think you're 100% right. And, by the way, inflation has slowed. Prices have not gone down. It's just that the rate of the increase of prices is slowing. So, and by the way, wages are not going up. Jobs are scarce. The job market's frozen. I totally agree with you. And I think that, when Trump ran in 15 and 16, he said, I'm going to do an infrastructure bill. He said, we're going to create jobs we're going to create government jobs to build highways and railroads and airports. That never happened.
Similar to the CCC of the 1920s or 30s.
Right.
I think we could really benefit with something like that.
I totally agree. And that was one of the big missed opportunities of his first term and second term. He also said, I'm going to bring taxes down for the middle class. Didn't do that. He did a corporate tax cut, which is a supply side tax cut. I think that's a disaster. And even the tariffs. You can have tariffs, but you need subsidies. In other words, you can't tell American producers, we're going to charge you 100% now to import something from China or India, and not give them money, give them the startup capital or tax benefits or anything to start doing it in America. So as a result, all that's happening is there's no investment and the costs are going up. So I think that Trump has been a disaster for the economy, honestly.
Who do you think foots the bill for the tariffs currently?
Well, strictly speaking, it is the producers, it is the businesses are eating most of it.
Which then pass it on to us.
Partially.
Yeah.
I think that's overstated.
You don't think it's as bad as people are making it out to be?
No, because the tariffs have, here's the problem with tariffs. The producers will eat the cost. They'll eat a lot of it. Some of the prices will go up, but they won't go up commensurate. The tariff will go up 15%, the price will go up 1%, let's say. But the problem with how the tariffs are being implemented is it's so chaotic that, and I know this because I talk to business people, they will tell me, we're just not making any moves.
Because it swings so quickly. One day we have a trade agreement. The next day it's 150%. The next day there might be something. I mean, even in T-shirts, like if anyone, I've seen it from one of my merch guys. Is like he's like anything I get custom made overseas. We try and ship stuff to Canada. It's been waiting in a lot for 3 months, and people are hitting me up like, "Hey, my sweatshirt didn't come in," and it's just the tariffs are making things a lot really clogged and. Like his big platform is making business easy. To me, the tariffs are making business difficult for a lot of people.
Yes, 100%. I totally agree. Because I'm pro-tariff, but what you need to do is implement it over time. It needs to be predictable. It needs to be consistent. You need to say, in 2 years, this is what all the tariffs are going to be. This is the tariff schedule for every type of good from every country. This is what it's going to be. And you make it expected, predictable, so that businesses are able to plan accordingly. But when you say, like you said, one day it's 100%, the next day we have a deal, everybody just sits on their money. They watch and they wait, and investment slows down. So that's a huge problem. I think that's really the main issue with the tariffs is the unpredictability.
I think the other thing that has contributed to a total Democratic sweep in the last few days is all the federal workers, particularly in Virginia, that Trump, is supposed to say, I have your back, but now these people don't know if they're getting paid. Airports are going to start to slow down during holiday travel. I think if they keep going on the path they are, Mike Johnson not swearing people in because they don't want the Epstein files to get voted on, it seemed like Trump had the potential, and this is coming from a guy, I voted independent in every single election except for one. Trump, his team coming in had the potential to really shake things up in a proper way. We thought finally the guy that fought against the system, he won, he's going to finally shake things up. And he instead became the system 2.0. Yep. And it's very confusing, very frustrating. I mean, I guess, what do you make of the trend of Trump's current administration?
I totally agree. I didn't vote last year for that reason. I didn't vote for anybody. And the reason why is because you knew it was going to be this way based on how the money was moving last year. And by that, I mean, there were 3 big industries that went behind Trump, or 3 big special interests: Silicon Valley, Wall Street, and the Israel lobby. Miriam Adelson, pro-Israel, gave Trump $100 million. Tim Mellon, the banker, gave Trump $200 million. Elon Musk from Silicon Valley gave Trump almost $300 million. And so I knew a year ago, Trump is getting in because the system basically favors him. 10 years ago, the whole idea was that Trump was against the whole world. Like you said, he was going to turn Washington upside down. A year ago, you could tell by where the money was moving. No, they wanted him to win because they knew that if he won, he's going to cut the taxes for the rich. He's going to deregulate the economy. He's going to deregulate AI. He's going to give all the favorable contracts to Anduril and Palantir, the little tech, these new tech companies. And he's going to do everything Israel wanted. So I think that Trump has effectively betrayed the movement. The America First, MAGA ideology, it's been a 180. And like you said, drain the swamp, he is the swamp. Scott Bessent comes from the Soros outfit. The Treasury Secretary, Rubio, this guy's campaign slogan was New American Century in 2016, which is like, that was the name of the think tank that designed the Iraq War. So everywhere you look, he has become entrenched and assimilated into the GOP and all the special interests that support them.
I think people that were bullish on Trump initially thought he has enough money that he can't be bought and he doesn't even need more money, so that he's sort of beyond that type of influence. Would you say that he's proved that he actually can be bought and is bought?
I don't know that he was necessarily bought, strictly speaking. I think that he wanted to be president by any means necessary, and I think he made deals, because he's a deal maker, to get ahead. And I think necessarily that involves compromise. And then I think what happened after he left office the last time is that he knew he was under the gun. If he didn't win in 24, he would have went to jail. So this was a situation where you win or you go to jail for the rest of your life. And basically,
you think it was that serious for him?
It was. He had the charges in 4 jurisdictions, in Georgia, New York, 2 charges from the feds, or 2 sets of charges. And if he was not able to win and pardon himself and escape the jurisdiction of New York and Georgia, he would have went to prison or house arrest forever. So he had to win, and winning involved cutting some deals. So I think he certainly made a deal to get out of jail.
And do you think he would have deserved to go to jail?
No, I think they did that. There's a very simple rule in politics, which is if you come at the king, you can't miss. And that's what Trump did. He went at the institutions. He went at the left-wing hegemonic system. He missed. He lost. They overthrew him in 2020. And then they were going to throw him in jail. They were going to throw him in jail and throw away the key. So that was the mistake that he made.
I guess another thing that seems so interesting about Trump's psychology right now is a guy that seemingly had the weight of the system against him is now in office using the system. Like, to me, the way that he's mobilized these ICE agents and the level of, it doesn't seem like they're very much held accountable. They get to wear masks, they get to abuse you, whether you're an American citizen or not. It seems like he's being very heavy-handed, and you would have guessed that a guy that faced the system would not have indulged in that way.
As far as ICE is concerned, I mean, one thing that I will say in their defense, and this is just true, is that ICE literally has not performed law enforcement duties in the history of their existence. And I know this because I talk to people in government. Their ICE agents, because we don't really deport a ton of people in the United States conventionally, they have no experience in the field. And so many of their personnel are inexperienced, untrained, and I think that maybe accounts for why a lot of them, look, it's amateurish. That's really what that is. I don't even think it's necessarily cruelty. I think these ICE agents are going out in very hostile conditions. They're untrained. They're not prepared. And I think that they're just amateurs. And that's why
You fall to the level of your training.
Right.
They say that in the fight world. Like, whatever you've trained in the gym, you fall to the level you're training on the streets.
Well, and they're just not professional. I'm sure it's a very difficult job when you're rounding people up that could be dangerous. And if you don't even have the level of experience as a cop, I'm sure it's very scary and stressful. And so they're probably freaking out, a lot of these guys.
Zip tying children?
I mean, I don't know about all that. I mean, I think that's a little dramatic. I
mean, have you seen any of the photos of that?
Yeah, but at the same time,
that seems ridiculous to me. Like a big tough guy basically wearing a Fed ski mask, zip tying a kid. It's just like, I don't want to have my tax money be part of that. Similar to I don't want my tax money to be part of Israel's bombing campaign. I don't want my tax money. That's already too much taxes coming out of my income. I don't want it to go towards that.
At the end of the day, though, that's just law enforcement. If they raid a building with 100 people, they got to secure the people. I mean, what are you going to do with these kids? I think you have to restrain the kids. You got to restrain
one
the
officer,
people there.
hey, I'm in charge of the kids. Kids, you're going to stand by me. I get that there's dirty things that have to be done in doing that job, but I do think because you're law enforcement, you should be held to a really high standard. You shouldn't be committing crimes on camera, assaulting people, beating them up. It seems very bullyish behavior with some of these guys.
Like I said, I can't defend everything they've ever done, but at the same time, it's law enforcement. And, so like, for example, in Chicago, I think that's what you're referring to. They went and raided this building. It was like an apartment complex. And the apartment complex was disgusting. It was filled with squatters. They installed their own deadbolt locks in the building. There's sitting water in the hallways. They're tapping into the exit signs to get their electric in their apartment, literally siphoning electricity from the emergency systems. And that's the kind of environment the cops are going into. You got to rescue the kids from the situation. So, people say law enforcement has a responsibility. Who are the people that are bringing children into the country illegally and putting them in a place like that? I think that
for sure it's a yin and yang. I'm not trying to make it like, oh, ICE is bad. These people are totally innocent. And I don't know enough. I don't know enough about who they're targeting. Because to me, if they're targeting an illegal immigrant that has a violent track record of crimes, yeah, I'm okay with getting him. But I saw it was maybe in Miami. It was a guy that had been, I think, a plumber for the last 10 or 15 years, supporting his family. He has a work van in the front. I'm not that interested in having him be rounded up and raided, particularly when you look at the job deficit with manufacturing and building. We need all the good guys we can get. I agree that they should try and come here legally. That would be the best case scenario. But as far as where I want my federal resources going, I'm not that worried about a guy that's showing up to work 5 or 6 days a week, fixing people's toilets, building people's homes. I don't know if that's a guy that we should be targeting.
I think they all got to go back, and I don't think that them being here for a long time undoes what they did, which is they came here illegally. And a lot of these illegal immigrants, people tell the story about, and I get it, because I know I'm in Chicago. There's a lot of illegal immigrants that work in the trades, that work in all these different industries. I get it. That being said, many of these people come here with the intention of sending remittances back home. So they come and work for money, and then they take the money out of the economy and send it back to their people in Mexico. Another thing, they come here and they work very hard, it's true, but many of them are on subsidized housing, subsidized food. They have a SNAP card. They send their kids to public school, paid for by the...
Can you get that without a Social Security, or they use a fake Social Security?
A lot of it's local. A lot of the welfare is local. And it's even forget about some of the other benefits. I do believe you could get SNAP without Social Security card. I do believe you get some of these other benefits. Even that notwithstanding, they don't have health insurance. When they need to go to the doctor, they go to the emergency room and they get it for free. When they send their kids to school, they send them to free public school. That costs the taxpayer a lot of money. And so it's easy to say, well, they're here, they're doing the landscaping and they're the plumbers and things like that. On net, over the long term, it costs the taxpayer a lot of money for these people to live here, for them to live here and get all the benefits of citizenship in our country without having had to immigrate here with no permission, and they're not really contributing actually on net that much to the economy.
So your argument would be they're a net negative to society?
Fiscally.
From a financial standpoint.
From a fiscal point of view, yes.
And do you know if that's for sure backed up by the numbers?
That's 100% backed up by the numbers, yes.
Okay, because I just saw a chart recently. It was maybe about Somalian Americans, Afghani Americans, the percentage of them that are on subsidies and the percentage that are a net negative. So I guess there is an argument, because you want, no matter, so would you have a different feeling on these immigrants if you viewed them to be financially positive towards this, our country?
No, even still, no. Because at the end of the day, we have to have a country. And that means that we get to choose who gets to live here. And by we, I mean our government, which represents us and has law enforcement responsibilities. We have to have borders. And for the past 4 years, when we were under Biden, you literally had millions of people crossing the border.
We went to different border crossings like Eagle Pass. It was just a flood of people. It was pretty remarkable.
It's insane. And we don't know who these people are. And, look, if they're coming here for no reason other than they want to work a job, then they should be on a visa program. Like, I'm not even necessarily against having a foreign worker program, but it's like, you come here, you do the job, and then you go home. But the idea that these people are going to have kids that become citizens, and they get to say, hey, we're all American, it's like, well, what really makes you American?
What does make someone American?
I think what makes someone American, it's a lot of things. It's speaking English. It's understanding the founding principles of the Constitution. It's having some heritage here. It's having some identification with the popular culture. If somebody is from West Africa or the Northern Triangle and they walk across the border and plant a flag and they work a little bit, oh, now they're as American as everybody else? I don't think so, and I don't think that's good for the country either.
I think Native Americans that might tune in and watch this would laugh because it's kind of darkly ironic. I don't
even know that because what is America? What is the word America? It comes from Amerigo Vespucci, European explorer. When we came here, the Indians were in teepees and doing their thing. They were eating corn. Who built the United States of America? It was European settlers.
And
who? And slaves. They were told to build those things.
Yeah, you don't think that was a little bit of a dark part of our history?
I mean, I think slavery is wrong, absolutely. But I don't know how helpful that is in the conversation.
But doesn't that mean that, let's say, Black Americans have every right to say they're Americans, they helped build this place?
Certainly. Black people, certainly. But when you say the Native Americans, I'm trying to distinguish between the civilization of the Indians, of the, whatever you want to call them, the Cherokee, the Comanche.
So what became a unified America?
Well, what became this nation? Mm-hmm. Those people did not build this nation. This is not their civilization, So they might have occupied the land, but who founded the United States of America? Jamestown, the colonies. Mm-hmm. It was these settlers, which I'm an Ellis Islander, so I don't mean we, but I mean it was European settlers. So That's what this country, this polity that we call the United States, that's what it is. And I don't think that anyone can literally roll up, walk across the border and say, oh, I'm American and that's irrevocable now. I'm American and that's just the way it is. Like, what makes you American? Yesterday you were Guatemalan, now you're an American because you walked onto the land? It makes no sense.
Nick, I want to ask you about your view on women, because when I was listening to the Tucker Carlson podcast in the car, there was a lot of moments me and my wife were nodding our head. Then towards the end of the interview, there were some times where we just started laughing and we're a little like, all right, like, this is a little bit nuts. First of all, what has been your dating experience in the last few years? I'd imagine this is a hard job because your security risk is a little bit higher. You're in the far right, which tends to be more men. What does your dating life look like in the last few years?
It's non-existent. I'm not dating. I'm not going out dating.
Are you looking at all?
No, and I don't even know if I'm going to get married. Really? I want to. I like the idea of it, but honestly, I really don't have a lot of interest in that.
So you don't think? I mean, are women what you look for?
Oh yeah, certainly, but
you don't have an idea. Do you want to spend your life with a woman?
No. I love when you phrase it that way. No, I mean, the idea of that sounds annoying to me.
So have you ever been in a serious relationship with a woman?
No, never.
Have you ever dated?
No.
Okay.
I've been on dates, but never.
So have you ever been just totally entranced by the magic of a woman?
No.
Really?
No.
Because I think once you discover how magical women are, that just dominates. Like, when I was falling in love with my wife, I couldn't think about anything else. I was so distracted during the day. And she was, at one time, we lived in a duplex. She was the upstairs neighbor, I was the downstairs neighbor. Didn't know each other for a while, but then during COVID, we started hanging out. And when I started liking her, there's a magic a woman brings into your life where they're almost like a mythical creature, I want to say, in a way. So I guess I'm just curious, I think that way you phrase it is like, a woman just supposed to be a helpmate. Why not just hire a cleaner or a butler? Is that how you kind of view what a woman would be in your life? Is there someone like, all right, needs folding, needs cooking, I'll be out, I'll be back at 8, I'll see you later. Like, is that kind of how your view?
No, but I mean, let's just start here. I would say that I recognize I'm not normal. I recognize that I'm not the norm. And, my attitudes that I express, they reflect I have a very particular idiosyncratic personality. Most men, like you said, are obsessed with, they want to find the right woman, they want to get married, they want to make their wife happy. That's just never something that motivated me. I've always been more motivated by my career, by ideas. I love ideas. I love politics. I love work. And I recognize that's not normal. This is not prescriptive. I'm not prescribing this for people. But as far as my critique as an outsider, from the outside looking in, I would say that, because I don't want you to think that I'm some like curmudgeonly freak that's like, shut up, woman, like, I want my But I do think that things have gone a little bit too far in the other direction with men and women, where I think that on some level, whatever level you want it to be, the man does have to have the authority in the relationship.
100%.
Yeah,
you don't think it's a give and take? Like, on certain things, like for me, on business ventures, I'm the final say, but maybe more things in the home, my wife's the final say. But then we also compromise and compare ideas a lot, and then we make a group decision as a team. I guess, because to me, you said one of the most important things was your Catholic ideology, right? First chapter, or first book of the Bible, God creates Eve to complete Adam. And they become kind of like, they become one. Is that not a symbol of how to live your life then, from the book you say is your ideology?
But it also says that a woman should not have authority over a man in the Bible. And listen, again, I'm saying this, look, you're married, you say women are magical. Tucker, we had that conversation. He's very much the same way. I'm not trying to say that you should be like screaming in your wife's face and I'm the boss. Like, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that the man is a responsible party because the man is stronger. And by that I mean, if an intruder comes into the house, who's going to defend the house? The man. In a crisis, who is screaming their head off and who's going to have to organize and get the family together? It's the man. The man is the responsible one in the relationship. And so on some level, whatever that level is, the guy has to be really the initiator. The guy has to be the final say. And I think that the situation now is that women are bossing around the men. The men are henpecked. The men are being nagged to death. The men are being told, you got to do this, you got to do that. And what we find is that the men now are, you say, hey, do you want to hang out? They go, I got to check with my wife first. Hey, can you come do this thing? Oh, I got to check with my wife first. And we're just getting a different kind of power dynamic, different kind of men, different kind of women. And I don't think anybody likes this. I don't think women like the weak men. I don't think men like the bossy women. So I'm just trying to say we got to maybe go back in the other direction a little bit.
So is it fair to say maybe the balance is that masculinity should be celebrated again? Because I think we went through a period where it's toxic masculinity. Being a man is bad. Men are just a bunch of pieces of shit. Yeah, I think like that far left idea of men wasn't helpful at all. But I would ask you this, because your audience is primarily young men, right? Mm-hmm. Do you think America will be better off if most men follow your shoes, where they don't date, they might not marry, they kind of have more of the helpmate view on women? Is that something that we want our young men to be feeling and thinking?
Well, like I said, I recognize that, my feelings are my feelings. My attitude towards it is my attitude. But I do think that men need to follow, maybe let's say someone like Andrew Tate. I'm a big supporter of Tate.
Another great ally of women, right?
Yes. Well, but look, he's talking about patriarchy. Mm-hmm. He's talking about how, let's not pretend that Andrew Tate came out of a vacuum. Let's not pretend that everybody woke up and said, I like this guy that's really aggressive and really hyper-masculine. He rose to prominence, and in part so did I, because young men are being nagged to death by the women, by helicopter moms when they're young that want to protect them from everything and want to basically make them like the bubble boy. You can't go outside, you can't explore, we need to be safe. Then they go into school. And the school is it's all female teachers, and they're constantly policing a boy or a man's natural desire to explore, to get into mischief, to be, to do the things that boys do. And then men go into college and you get the Me Too movement, you get the rape allegations, you get the I consent. Is this okay? Can I kiss you? Is this okay? The kind of Me Too, sign on the dotted line sexuality. They've effectively criminalized any kind of what it means to be a man, what it means to be masculine. And so it's in the wake of this that a guy like Andrew Tate becomes super popular. And yeah, I don't think that every man should be running an OnlyFans site like he does, or a polygamist or whatever, but certainly he needs to move back in a patriarchal direction. So
I guess when I look at guys like you and Andrew Tate, I feel like you guys take the most extreme take and you don't see the middle at all, where it's like women are a huge asset to our lives. Like for me, I wouldn't be able to do half of what I do in my career without my wife being the glue at home, mm-hmm. especially with having a son. Like she is a massive help to the operation. She's the bookkeeper. She's the one that when I go on trips, she holds everything down. But I feel like the message is I don't hear you kind of pointing out what women are a help or an asset for. It's more like this kind of internet pseudo alpha male style of like.
Do I sound like an alpha male? I don't think I'm.
No, I guess maybe that's. Do you get where I'm coming from at all? Where it's
kind of. I mean, I guess what I would say is, I feel like it almost goes without saying. I think that men should love their wives, mm-hmm. and look, women literally create life.
Yeah.
Where would we be without our mothers?
They sacrifice a lot for that.
Well, I don't even. I mean, yeah, I think it's difficult, but I think that's the joy of a woman's life, is to have a child. Who else can compare to the relationship that you have with your mother? I think you sacrifice what? Work? Sacrifice what? I mean, having a child as a woman should be the most rewarding, best thing. There's no closer bond that exists than between a mother and her child. And, and I do believe that women are suited towards that role. They love nurturing their child. They have patience for their child. They relate to the child in a way that a man cannot. And so for me, I guess that goes without saying, because all we are told is the future is female, feminism, men ain't shit, this kind of thing. So I guess that's the last thing men need to hear, is this sort of reassurance like, hey guys, women are still really cool. I still think women are great and they're essential. They're necessary for the propagation of the species, and they're necessary for men.
For breeding purposes, women are very great. Everything else outside of the house.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, women are awesome. I mean, do we really need to say that? I feel like that goes without saying.
I guess, but it doesn't feel like it's said very much from the.
Yeah, I just don't feel the need to. To me, that almost just feels like pandering.
Do you plan on having kids any day?
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea of it, but I just, to tell you the truth, it's not something I'm really looking forward to that much, honestly. Because I mean, I like my work. I'm obsessed with my work, and honestly, to tell you the truth, I like the silence. You know, Schopenhauer writes that silence is such an undervalued thing. I like that when I wake up and I move through the house, it's purely quiet, it's peaceful. And, you know, some people love the idea of like their big, you know, chaotic family. Maybe I'm a little autistic or I'm a little particular.
Would you say you're monkish at all?
Not monkish, because I don't have a ton of discipline, but I'm definitely simple. I guess I'm a simple person in that way.
I mean, would you say that right now what you're doing is what you were put on earth to do?
Yes. I'm obsessed. I'm a man that's possessed.
And when you stumble upon that one thing, it's such an unbelievable feeling. Like, to me, that's one of the, like, there's probably three major things of what you can find, three major questions in life. What are you going to do with your life? Who are you going to spend it with? And what are you going to believe in? And it seems like you have two out of the three figured out well.
And the one is who I'm going to be with, or?
I think it's a pretty big one.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a personal. The other thing, of course, is I don't know if I maybe would have been married if I had a different career track. You know?
I feel like it's a tough position for, in your shoes, to even go out on dates, to go out in public, and I can see why it would be something that you're just head down. But I guess there's a lot of MAGA hotties out there. I mean, do you get DM'd by women much?
A lot lately.
Really?
Yeah. I've been doing this for 9 years. I used to never get any interest from women at all. But all of a sudden, the past 2 months, my DMs are just filled with, I want to marry you. I want to fill out the wife application. And I don't know if I want to marry a fan of mine. That seems weird. Don't you think?
Yeah, it's almost like you want a woman that doesn't care whether you're famous or not.
Right.
That's not part of the selection process. Although you do want a woman that can handle it, because this is going to be a trajectory of your life.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and that's cool with it, you know, that's kind of down for it in that way. That's the other difficult thing is you bring a woman into the equation, and I know that I can handle everything that comes to me. I've had to deal with a lot of things doing this, the debanking, you know, the assassination attempts, the rest of it. But you bring a woman and child, you almost feel irresponsible to take risks and put yourself out there, because you don't, you know, I sort of have an idea, like, if I die doing this, so be it. We all got to die someday, and I wouldn't want to be doing anything else. But you bring in like an innocent woman and child into the mix, then it's like, should I say this? Should I do this? Is this going to get people mad? Are they going to try and kill me? Because then you got to worry about their well-being. And so you almost can't even be a good revolutionary.
You can't be as fearless.
Right.
Because now it's not just you that you're playing with on the chessboard, it's people you love.
Exactly. So that does concern me, because it affects even my parents and my immediate family, let alone my, you know, if I decide to have a family of my own.
Are your parents or friends and family, are they ever publicly targeted or gone after?
They are, yeah, absolutely.
What is that like?
Well, people go after my parents all the time. They post pictures of them on social media. They dox my dad, my dad's business, all that kind of stuff. And it's frustrating, because like I said, I can handle it. I can take it, and I can answer for my own words and decisions. But it's unfair to make somebody else answer for what their children do. And it makes me feel guilty.
Lately, you've been in some news stories about kind of the split between MAGA. Your appearance on Tucker Carlson raised a lot of questions or had a lot of news stories attached to it. Tell me about the little civil war that's happening within the MAGA movement. Describe it.
Well, you know, this has been a civil war that's been going on for a long time, I would say. It's just that now our side is getting really big. And really what it comes down to is this. In 2024, everyone rallied behind Trump. He had a landslide, blowout victory, won the popular vote. It's like unbelievable that happened. And everybody was so excited for the golden age. And a year ago, during the election, I said, I'm not voting for Trump because he's gone against America first. He says that he's going to staple green cards to diplomas. He's going to give permanent residency to foreign students. I thought that he was going to take us to war in Iran, which he then did. And I had a number of other concerns, but it prefigured the conflict now. Trump gets elected. Everybody's so excited. And what does he do? He takes us to war in Iran. He covers up the Epstein files. The mass deportations are not happening at the pace that people wanted to see them at. And so everybody on the right wing is starting to say, okay, so what was it all for? Why did we elect you? Why did we fight for the past 10 years in this MAGA movement? Was it so that we could give Israel more money? Was it so that we could do another war in the Middle East? Is it for corporate tax cuts? So people basically started to say that with a lot of the things going on in the administration, he's not putting America first. He's not keeping his promises. And so there's been this steady, growing voice inside of MAGA that is saying Trump needs to put Americans first again. And increasingly, they're butting up against the Israel lobby and other special interests that are saying, we have to do it this way. We have to go to war with Iran. We have to cut the taxes. We have to, do all these other things. And so now I think it's threatening to split the faction right before the midterms next year.
It seems one issue that left and right is starting to agree on, especially amongst young people, is we are vehemently against the bombings in Gaza. We're against giving the Israelis a blank check to do, to me, what I think is no other way to describe it but brutal, horrific. And they try and gaslight us into it's necessary. Israel has the right to defend itself. Bombing most of the civilian infrastructure in Gaza is not defending yourself. And then if you even question that, you're an anti-Semitic. So I guess break down more of the Israel first versus America first factions, and what points are these Israel first people trying to sell that really aren't working?
Well, you go back to October 7th, 2023, and what was interesting about that is this happened under the Biden administration. And after October 7th, a lot of the left-wing Jewish billionaires who were lifelong Democrats shifted to the right. Why? Because the Biden administration, filled with Democrats in the Senate, Democrats in the National Security Council, they said we're reluctant to support Israel's war because they support the right of Gaza to have a state, to have their own government. And so there was a decision that was made in the organized Jewish community that Trump is going to be better for Israel. Trump, because the Republican Party is beholden to Israel, he's going to let the war in Gaza continue. He's going to give them the 2,000-pound bombs. He's going to give them the foreign aid. He's going to bomb Iran. And I do believe that a big part of Trump's victory, it was delivered by the Israel lobby. That was the outcome they wanted because they knew they could count on him, for example, to let Israel take the West Bank, to let Israel finish the job and do regime change in Iran. And so at the start of the year, all of the America First MAGA types said, we want the war in Gaza to end. We're paying for it. And we're paying for a genocide. And we're Christian. We don't want to pay for a genocide. And as long as we have leverage over Israel, we want to use it to make them stop. What's more, Israel's expanding the war into every other country, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Yemen, Iran. And people are saying, we want no new wars. We want to wind all of that down. We want peace and we want prosperity. We want to focus on the situation at home. Like people can't afford insurance and we're paying to go to war in Iran. And so there's this, like I said, there's this growing voice. There's a growing faction, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens.
Thomas Massey, Ro Khanna.
Exactly. And Ro Khanna on the Democrat side, everybody's starting to say, enough is enough. It's got to stop. But you have this element inside the GOP. I would describe it as pro-Israel Jews and Christians that are saying...
Do you think it's more so on the right than the left that Israel has strong ties?
Absolutely.
You don't think there's people on the left that are also bought by the Israel lobby?
There are.
But it's stronger on the right.
Far stronger on the Republican side. Because, 15 years ago, that was Sheldon Adelson's vision. After Citizens United in 2010, Sheldon Adelson's vision was we're going to pour $100 million every cycle into the GOP and really make the GOP like the pro-Israel party. And it was even going on before that, but that's really when they started laying the money down. And, now there's this contradiction that's coming to the surface, which is on paper, you're America first, but in effect, in reality, you're putting Israel ahead of the American people. And this is a contradiction which is going to have to resolve itself before 2028.
I mean, what do you make of guys when you see Talmud Ted, they call him, or Talmud Tatum, or Marco Rubio, where I saw some of the leaked emails between Bill Ackman, and it just seems so obvious, the infiltration. What is motivating a guy, you think, like Ted Cruz to be so balls to the wall Israel, where he's coming up with these ridiculous statements like, if you're against Israel, you're against America. If you're against Jewish folks, you're against Christians. And by the way, no one even talks about Jewish people. I feel like, well, maybe you do, but when it comes, like, I did the Israel piece, and not one time did I mention Jewish people. I meant, all I talked about was Israeli brutality, and somehow that makes you a Jew hater. I love Jewish people as I love other people. What do you think these figures on the right are so motivated by to be so ride or die Israel?
It's hard to say because I don't know what's in their hearts. I don't know why Ted Cruz does what he does. I would say that he's an older guy. He's been pushing that line for his entire life. He went to Harvard Law School, I believe is where he went for law school, or Yale. I believe he went to both schools. He's been a card-carrying GOP guy that whole time, for his whole life, for decades. And I think that for these older guys, once you reach a certain age, it's difficult to change your mind. And so I think for a lot of them, they have been imbibing the propaganda for so long, you're never going to change their mind. And so whether it's for religious reasons, they're Protestants and they believe Israel is, God blesses those that bless Israel, or it's for political reasons and Israel is just part of the Republican team and that's what we need to do to win, or whether you think Israel is really our closest ally and we need them as a country strategically. I don't know which one of those he would say is the biggest reason, but I think that you just do it so long, you're in too deep, basically. You're sort of compromised. There's really no other way you can go. So I don't think it's a coincidence that it's the young people that are waking up. The old people, they've been devouring this stuff hook, line, and sinker for 100 years. It's the younger people that are waking up and saying, you know what, this is weird. Like, there is something off about all this. And like you said, there's something obvious and explicit about the infiltration, the kind of subversion. So that would be my answer on that.
So I know your slogan is America first, but is it ever necessary for the interests of America to support our allies, whether that be Ukraine or Israel, or should we just be totally isolationist, like more of a Ron Paul mentality, where it's just like, you guys, you deal with your own wars, we'll deal with ours? How do you factor that into America first?
Well, we have a military. The military is paid for by the taxpayers. The government is made up of, by, for the people. As long as that is the case, our military and our government should put the interests of Americans first when they use the military, when they use the soft power, which is sanctions, things like that. But the question is, how do you put Americans first? In what way? And I would say the first job strategically of the country is to keep the homeland safe, protect the homeland from threats. But then there's other vital interests, shipping routes, trade routes, supply chains. To get iPhones, for example, you need the rare earth minerals. To get a lot of the advanced manufacturing, you need critical minerals, which are located in Africa and China. You need oil, you need natural gas. So what is the American interest when the United States is in the position of being a global empire, and also in the era of nuclear bombs? It's actually not so clear what that is. You could say 200 years ago, we're protected by the oceans. As long as we're not invaded, we're happy. As long as, Germany doesn't invade us, we're okay. But now, what if North Korea builds an ICBM? That might be a problem for us. What if a terrorist gets access to a nuclear weapon or a biological weapon? That's a problem. What if you have China taking control of the shipping routes in the Strait of Malacca, in the Pacific, in the Indo-Pacific? What if they deprive us of the minerals we need? We're in jeopardy. So I think that as long as the United States has as its first principle just the question, what does this do for us? As long as there's a reasonably compelling answer, I'm okay with that. So defending Ukraine, there's actually a case to be made, which is that if Russia is able to invade Ukraine, will they invade the rest of Europe? I don't know that they want to. I don't know if they can, but it's a reasonable question. If Ukraine is not defended, Is Estonia going to be defended? And what does that say about all our security guarantees? It gets a little bit convoluted, but I think as long as there's an answer of, here's how this directly makes Americans safer, richer, better off, then I'm fine with it. And sometimes that means you have to fight conflicts that don't appear to be your own. So I'm not an isolationist in that way.
Do you approve of our gargantuan military budget?
Yeah, I do.
You don't think that's hurting us from a financial standpoint?
No, I think that when you look at the budgetary outlays, the military, it's not even close to the biggest expense.
Isn't it like $1 trillion a year?
It is.
The military expenses is the biggest chunk of our expenditures, is it not?
No, the biggest expenditures are Social Security, Medicare. Increasingly, it's going to be interest on the debt. Those will be like the big three.
But $1 trillion a year, because to me, this is the comparison is that $1 trillion a year we could have spent on U.S. infrastructure, or we could have spent on building relationships. Instead, we spend it on bombs. In the last 20 years, we've spent about $20 trillion. And what favors has it really done across the world for us? Are people happier to know America because we bomb poor people largely in the Middle East? At what point do we need to dial that back a little bit and spend internally and also be financially responsible? Because we are, at this point, financially retarded.
I would say that you got to distinguish between having a big military and being at war all the time. I don't believe that we should be in Iraq. I don't believe that we should be in Syria. I'm glad we got out of Afghanistan. And a lot of people said, well, we bungled the withdrawal from Afghanistan. If we didn't, we would have never gotten out of there. You know, people say, well, we should have done it in an organized way. They would have kept pushing that down the road ad infinitum because that's how they play. They don't want us to leave Afghanistan. That being said, we are a global empire. Whether we want to be or not, we are. And I do believe that given that we are the biggest country, most powerful country, we should have a military that matches that to secure our interests. So do we need to have a military base in every country? I think we should probably scale back the footprint. We don't need to be at war in 20 Middle Eastern and North African countries, but I don't think that $1 trillion is crazy. I think that, we could maybe scale it back $200 billion.
Isn't that the argument, is that that's what's stretching the empire thin, so to speak, is by having bases all over the place that are an extreme cost, and plus military benefits is an extreme cost.
Mm-hmm.
That, like, it's kind of a welfare system that we don't dive into. Is there's a lot of, people on disability, there's a lot of expenses that the military pays, but do you think that by making it more condensed that would be good for our finances? I
think that, we should prioritize what we have here at home. And by that, I don't even just mean the homeland, but I mean the Western Hemisphere. I think that we should there's a new school of thought inside the national security community. They call it a prioritizer. We have to prioritize which theaters are the most important. And so, for example, Asia, that's a very important theater of strategic competition where China, they're building a massive navy. They're building up their nuclear arsenal. They want to invade Taiwan. Maybe they're trying to build up their presence in the South and East China Sea. We should deploy our resources there to check them. Do we need to have bases all over Europe? I think Europe should provide for their own security. Same goes for the Middle East. Should we have bases all over the Middle East surrounding Iran? No, I think that we should hand that off to some other countries. But I do think that we should have a huge military. I think that it's better for America to be the most powerful country in the world because power projection is what secures resources. Resources are the wealth of a nation. And if it's not going to be us, it'll be another country.
Are you talking about our resources or resources around the globe?
Resources around the globe.
And do you think we should just be able to come in, like for instance, Venezuela? Mm-hmm. Some could argue that this is another play on oil.
Certainly is.
Do you think that's ethical?
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah?
Yes.
You think the CIA should just be able to overthrow Venezuela, put in that puppet that got the Nobel Peace Prize simply because there's oil?
I think that their current government's totally corrupt. Mm-hmm. I don't think the Bolivarians, Hugo Chavez, Maduro, these are not good people. And I think that in Latin America, the whole continent is corrupt. South and Central America, they're all corrupt. And I think that it really makes no difference whether they're selling the oil to China or the United States. They're going to fall under the umbrella of some other superpower. That's just the reality of politics. There's sort of this idealistic belief that a country's going to nationalize its resources and they're going to be independent. They're not going to answer to anybody. It's not true. Those resources are going to go to some other country. They can't consume all their own energy. They can't consume all their own resources, and they're going to need to trade for other things. And the question is who they're going to buy their guns from and who they're going to sell their oil to. If it's not Beijing, it'll be Washington. If it's not Washington, it'll be Moscow. Between a few major patron states. That's just a great power game, and I don't think there's any getting out of that.
And you don't think we should just play it fairly by having good trade negotiations? Do you think we should overthrow their leadership and install our person so that we get the oil access?
I don't prefer regime change, but I think that can be a useful tool. And in Venezuela in particular, it's not just that they won't sell us their oil, because they actually, I mean, look, Biden let them sell their oil, and so it's not so simple as that. The problem with Venezuela is they are strategically aligned with our enemies. Beijing, Moscow, Tehran.
In what way?
They buy weapons from Russia. They have infrastructure projects with China. And one of the problems with infrastructure is that all infrastructure is dual use. So let's say, for example, like in, I think it's Ecuador or Peru, China wanted to build a deep water port in one of those countries. A deep water port can be used for trade. It could also be used for a naval vessel. And so could it be that in 20 years, China leases the port from Venezuela or from Ecuador or wherever? They turn it into a military base. And then we have a Chinese military presence in South America. That's the nature of dual use, whether you're building a radar dish, which could be used for surveillance, or a port, which could be a future naval base. The question is whether we're going to have a great power adversary gain a foothold in South America. So it's strategic. We want all the countries in the Western Hemisphere to be strategically aligned with the United States.
Now, I think that's what you brought up is kind of an interesting analysis of how China has played their international relations and how we've played it. It seems China is like, hey, we're going to help you with your infrastructure. We're going to help fund these projects. They may have ulterior motives. It's likely that's a dual motive. But we have instead spent all of our military or international spending, it seems like, on bombing. And to me, the Chinese approach seems like it would be more fruitful in the long run.
It's not, well, I would say that in terms of China, it's not really what it seems to be. They're not doing that because they're altruistic or magnanimous. This Belt and Road Initiative, they're building ports and transportation. They're basically building a global empire for themselves. They're building a global trade empire for themselves to enrich themselves. And eventually that global trade empire, the sort of ground that they cover, is then going to become a military empire. That's ultimately the goal. I mean, why do you think China's building so many naval vessels? They have the biggest navy in the world. That's not so that they can be magnanimous to every country. That's because they want to be a regional and then maybe a global hegemon. They want to rule the world. Every country wants to rule the world. And with the United States, I think that we're pretty benevolent as a country.
You think so?
I think that we are, actually, yes.
You think all the coups in Central America from the 60s on and all that kind of stuff is benevolence?
Compare it to other great powers. The Soviet Union just straight up invaded countries, invaded and crushed resistance in Poland and Hungary and Prague. I mean, they just straight up made those countries vassals. There wasn't even a pretext, at least the United States, and I'm not going to defend all the black ops of the CIA, but the Soviet Union, when they were in their heyday, when they were a rival global power, they enslaved half of Europe. And they had no political sovereignty at all, no political independence, economic independence at all. So I think that when you're talking about power, we're in the business of power. There's no getting away from the fact that we are going to be the authority in the world. But the question is the means. Are we more benevolent than other great powers throughout history? Like a Joseph Stalin, like, some of the great tyrants of history. I think
great tyrants of history.
By great, I mean the most powerful, those with the greatest empires. Great is not a synonym for good. You know that, right?
Well, it could be the most impressive. I mean, I see what you're saying, but I just think it's a funny word choice given your admiration of Stalin.
Well, great. Okay. Great is about magnitude. To say something is great means it's large, it's vast. So a great dictator meaning someone with power. Awesome even. Awesome means awe-inspiring. It's big.
So do you think Trump will be able to, because some say that he's a populist, do you think he'll be able to correct this ship in time to set up the Republicans for a win in 2028? Or do you think this ship is too far off course that it's going to be a big sweep going forward for the next few years?
I think that Republicans are in a lot of trouble for 28 because with Trump off the ballot, who do they have? Rubio, Vance, are these people that are going to be able to mobilize the coalition that Trump did? I think that Trump had kind of like a unique effect. He's charismatic. He's a known quantity. You know what you're getting with him. He also, I think, a lot of the conventional rules don't apply to him. Like he's promising mass deportations, but he gets a record number of Hispanics to vote for him. I think that's uniquely something that Trump was able to tap into. Will a Rubio or a Vance be able to inspire people? Will they be able to connect people in the same way? They're much more conventional politicians. I think there's a problem with Trump off the ballot, just for openers. But beyond that, I think there's a real problem with how Trump has been governing. If things keep going the way they are, if the economy doesn't get much better, if we're still in the war in Ukraine in a few years, if we're responsible for more devastation in Gaza, I don't know that Republicans are going to be able to make a case that people are better off 4 years after Trump. So I think they're going to, obviously there's a lot of game left. We're only a year in, not even to the Trump administration. But if it keeps going like this, they're going to have problems.
What do you make of J.D. Vance from his origin story to where he is now? How would you break him down?
Well, I think he's a fraud. I think he's a political creation. Everything about him is fake. His whole story, his private sector career, it's all fake.
Break it down.
So he comes from Ohio, and he has this story that he's this, he is the epitome of the white working class that was left behind by globalization, victim of addiction in his family, and all that sort of thing, which is fine.
You think that was a real part of his story?
That's a real part of his story. That's authentic.
So the Hillbilly Elegy, real book.
There is some, I think they exaggerate how poor he was, because realistically, later in his life, he was sort of like upper middle class. He wasn't exactly destitute throughout his childhood, let's put it that way. But then you start to get problems when he goes into the Marines. They say he's a Marine. Do people know that he was writing press releases in the Marines? I feel like people think he's a combat veteran, like he was out there fighting. And it reminds me of Pete Buttigieg. Did he go into the military to fight for his country, or was that a way to position himself? And people don't like when people talk like this, but this is a facet of politics, that service is used as a springboard into a political career, if that's what you're into. And so someone like a Pete Buttigieg, who I think is very similar in that regard, sort of like a political striver, extremely ambitious, maybe sociopathic, a guy like that goes in the military because they want to be the president. Vance becomes a Marine writing press releases because he wants to be the president. He goes to Yale Law School. And when he's there, he gets mentored by David Frum, who's a speechwriter for George W. Bush. He's a neocon. David Frum coined the phrase axis of evil. He came up with this. Iran, Iraq, North Korea. He's one of the architects of this welfare warfare state that started after the global war on terror. So he gets mentored by David Frum. Then he gets mentored by Peter Thiel. And Peter Thiel at this time is a...
How did they meet?
So Peter Thiel did a speech at Yale University where J.D. Vance was there for law school. And J.D. Vance came up to him after the speech. They exchanged information, and they carried on a correspondence over email. And Vance said this is the most important moment in his life, meeting Peter Thiel. He said that was the deciding point. That was the decisive moment. And so Vance finishes law school, and under the tutelage of Peter Thiel, he writes this book, Hillbilly Elegy. He goes out to Silicon Valley, and he works a bunch of no-show jobs in a series of venture capital firms. And everybody that he works for says, we never saw him in the office. We don't know exactly what he even did.
So he was put on payroll to have a resume builder.
Yes, he was put on the payroll at Peter Thiel's venture capital firm, Mithril. And the people there said, we never saw him in the office. We don't know what he actually did. And
what did he do, do you think?
He was promoting his book. While he was working at Mithril, he was on his book tour in 2016. He was going to the Aspen Institute. He was making his Netflix series. He was a contributor on CNN. He was given a job, put on the payroll, as billionaires do, given that kind of patronage so that he could start to build this political career. And so he's building this resume as a Marine, as a venture capitalist. And by the way, what is Mithril? It's a VC firm. What does VC specialize in? High-risk startups, tech startups in Silicon Valley. And maybe that doesn't mean anything to people, but that is where the money is. The biggest movers in the stock market are the tech companies. It's Amazon, Microsoft, Netflix, Apple, NVIDIA. These are the big companies. So if you're JD Vance working for Thiel, who's a tech mogul from PayPal Mafia, it's not just any no-show job. You're ingratiating yourself with the next billionaire class. Because wherever the industry is, that's where the money is. Where the money is, politics soon follows. Because whoever builds the billionaire fortune, they then build their lobbying empire. They then capture the regulatory state, the government. So he's at Mithril promoting his book, and the basis of the book is, I'm the Trump whisperer. Why are the white people angry? Why are the white people going for Trump? I can explain it. I can translate for them to the New York Times. You know, the New York Times looks at them as hillbillies. You know, they're knuckle-dragging primitives. They're racist. They're coarse. They're illiterate. And Vance comes and says, I went to Yale. I was one of them, but I went to Yale. And I can speak their language. And here's what they're really saying. So in other words, he's put in politics to mediate between the pitchforks and torches, the rubes, the peasants, and the elites. And he's basically there to deliver the rubes back into the system. He's there to go to the New York Times and say, this is why they're angry. And he's going to go to the peasants and say, I'm one of you. Trust me, I'll fix it. But in the meantime, he's at Mithril shaking hands with all of the future Palantir, Anduril, all the future SpaceX, Tesla people that are going to be running the government. And so this is his venture capital career. This is in the mid to late 2010s where he's doing this. And the big problem for him, of course, is that Trump wins the election. Why is this a problem? Because the whole conceit of Vance's book and everything is he's trying to get all the peasants to calm down. He's trying to tell them, you can't blame all your problems on immigrants. You can't blame all your problems on China. You're the problem. You're not working hard enough. If you're addicted to drugs, if your town got destroyed because the factory left, if you're poor, it's because you're not working hard enough. It's because you're making excuses. You're a loser. That's the basis of the book. And so he's supposed to steer them into a conservatism that says, we're still going to keep free trade. We're still going to keep mass immigration. We're still going to do the supply side economics. You need to get smarter. So he was meant to basically steer the angry white people away from populism and back into elitism. That was the goal. But Trump wins on the basis of all those things he was trying to steer them away from. Because Trump says, no, NAFTA took the jobs. Free trade took the jobs. Illegal immigration did take the jobs. That's what it is. It's cheap labor. The drugs are pouring in because the government is letting them do that. And so Vance then has to go and rework his strategy. So they hold the meeting in January 2017 after the inauguration. And by they, I mean J.D. Vance, David Frum, his old mentor, all of his political connections. They hold the meeting and they say, well, what are we going to do now? How can I become the president if I spent the past year attacking Trump as Hitler and a Nazi and basically counter-signaling that message? How am I going to endear the people to me for my run? And so for a couple of years, they say, well, maybe Trump will fail. So Vance keeps calling him a Nazi, keeps attacking him, says maybe Trump is a flash in the pan. They realize Trump isn't going away. And so from roughly 2020 until 2022, they engage in rehabilitation. Vance moves back to Ohio. He gets an apology with Trump in Mar-a-Lago, and he starts to rebrand himself as a nationalist. And all of a sudden starts saying, you know what? I was wrong. Trump was right. Trump is the man. He's not a Nazi. He's a great guy. He starts going to the National Conservatism Conference, and he starts to basically take Trump's message and adopts all of it as his own and starts to put in some of the features that Peter Thiel wants, you know, that some of the donors want. And that's basically a short history of how you go from Vance as this guy from Appalachia through the no-show jobs in venture capital under the tutelage of Thiel and Frum to now he's supposed to be the heir apparent of MAGA, pushing the Trump message. That's why I say the whole thing is fake.
I mean, he seemed like a pretty obvious industry plant that he's been groomed from the beginning. And I think he's mastered the political ability to answer a question without saying anything. I saw at the TPUSA event, the kids were asking all the right questions to him. And which is really encouraging to see that the young people were not skipping a beat. They knew exactly what they needed to go after. And the way he would talk circles with his answers, he just seems like a total puppet, and it almost seems like he'll say anything to be in power.
Well, and who really is he? When he was against Trump in 2016, this is a grown man. It's not like he was a kid. He's a grown man. And he said with conviction, Trump is literally Hitler. Trump is literally a Nazi. 2 years later, now you're his #1 cheerleader, so what changed? And it's obvious. He realized that Trump has staying power. He realized that he's going to need Trump's endorsement to become the senator from Ohio. And somebody like that, I just don't trust. I don't think he sincerely changed his views. I think, like you said, he'll say anything that he needs to say to get power. And when he thought never Trump was the future, he was a never Trumper. When he thought that kissing Trump's ass was the future, he's kissing Trump's ass. So someone like that, even if they say the right things, you can't believe what they say.
J.D. Vance, I think, I could see he might make the calculations that I maybe think this original way, I'm going to adapt to Trump so that I can win the presidency. But I don't think if your route to the top involves folding or compromising who you are, I don't think all of a sudden when you become president, now all of a sudden the good guy version of yourself is going to take root. I'm very skeptical of that. I think especially the younger Republicans and independents are very much waking up to the fact we have another puppet that is trying to tell us who to vote for.
Right. Well, he's a plant. All you have to know about Vance is that he would not have a political career without Peter Thiel. If Peter Thiel didn't give him the no-show job when he pushed his book, if Peter Thiel didn't broker a meeting between Vance and Trump so that Trump could endorse Vance and Vance could apologize to Trump, if Peter Thiel didn't give him $15 million for a Senate run, which is the biggest outside contribution in a Senate race, there would be no Vance. What's more, it was Thiel, Elon Musk, and Tucker that convinced Trump to pick Vance as the vice presidential nominee last year. So all you need to know is that he has had one consistent patron for basically 15 years, and it's a CIA contractor who makes surveillance products for foreign intelligence and law enforcement. Like, I don't trust the guy. He's a plant.
I guess I find this interesting because in how you diagnose ICE, you want federal power to increase. Do you not view Palantir as an arm of the federal government that's going to increase their power? Like, you see how does that overlap in your thinking about how the federal government should wield power?
No, because Palantir is engaged in surveillance. And they will deny that. They say, well, we don't collect the data. Okay. The NSA collects all the data and you just make it usable. So in other words, you enhance surveillance. Sorry, you don't collect the data. You just make it so that the NSA could see it all at the same time. That's one thing. And I believe there's a constitutional protection. It's called the Fourth Amendment. We have a constitutional right to privacy. But in terms of immigration enforcement, that's also constitutional. It is the president's job to enforce immigration law. And I think that, we can deport illegals while also saying that we should have a right to privacy from surveillance. So, federal power is something we're never getting away from. We're going to have a central government in a big country. We're going to need a pretty big one. The question is, what do you want it to do? How do you want it to do it? And will it do it well? That's what I'm concerned with. And I think that surveillance is something that mass surveillance should not be one of those activities.
You got to sit down with Trump.
I did.
On more than one occasion?
Just the one time.
Okay. What is your read of him in person? Is he a genuine guy? Does he have feelings? Is he warm? Or is he kind of just a mafia boss kind of a guy? Like, what is your breakdown of how Trump really is in person?
Well, he's, I would describe him as a very good politician. He seems like he's probably a guy. You know, he's a guy's guy. He's a nice guy. He's a warm guy. But he also strikes me as like the perfect politician, perfect salesman. A lot of people mistake that for warmness. And what I mean by that is if Trump meets a voter and says, oh, I'm going to give you a hat, I'll shake your hand, let's get a picture. People say, he was so nice. Mm-hmm. Is he going to be mean? He knows he's on camera. He knows people are going to talk about it. So I think he's a good politician. He was...
Do you think he genuinely cares about the poor middle class, working people in this country?
It's hard to know what's in a person's heart. Does he genuinely care for them? I don't know. You know, who can really say? I didn't get that. I don't know if I can make that judgment from having dinner with him. If he really deep down in his heart of hearts cares, or if he's just saying the things that he says. I don't know the answer to that question. I think he's about as caring as anybody else is. I think that's sort of overrated.
You think it's overrated to care about people?
I think it's overrated because the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Do I care that Trump sincerely means it? When he says, I care about the people, do you mean it? Do I need to see an emotional display? No. We need to see the right policies. Competence is more compassionate, in my opinion, because you could really be the biggest, you know, cry me a river, like give me the waterworks, emotional, I stay awake at night worrying about the middle class. But if you're incompetent, it doesn't matter because the people are going to suffer. So to me, it's really more important, are you going to get the job done?
But they overlap, right? Like I think both are important. You should be compassionate and you should be competent. It shouldn't be a one or the other.
Yeah, I think people should be compassionate, but like I said, I do believe that's overrated. I think that most people are basically compassionate, but I'm really looking for actually competence. And sometimes people do the right things for the wrong reasons. What really motivates a person? You know, will Trump do a good job because he really, you know, his heart bleeds for the middle class? Or is it because of his vanity? Because he wants people to think of him as a great leader? Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, I think people just want somebody to do a good job. They care less what the real reason is, what the stated reason is. They want someone that's competent. So like I said, I really believe that's overrated.
I mean, I guess I just look at who he is as a person. I don't see him being very warm with his wife. I don't see him, like they don't have a dog in the White House. He's not a guy that I feel like goes camping or goes to national parks. Like there's a lot of like very human experience. I don't see him cooking dinner with I mean, you have some overlap here.
Yeah.
Like, you know, Trump is not a guy he's making a potluck with his family. It's, get the fast food in here. Like, to me, there's a stripped down, I don't want to say industrial feeling to him, mm-hmm. but I don't see a strong person within him. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but, you know, I think that Trump is a warlord. That's politics. Politics is brutal. And when you strip away all of the marketing materials, it's like a knife fight for power. That's what it is.
Yeah.
And it's a question of discipline and ruthlessness and a kind of game sense that is similar to a war, to like actual battle. And so the types of personalities that can rise to the top in an environment that is filled with deception, cunning, treachery, the kind of brutal attacks, the callousness, you do lose your humanity in that. And that's why I say it's overrated, the compassion, because you're not going to find a lot of that in a battle. It's sort of like with a policeman or in a war. If you're a woman or a child in a war zone, do you want to be with a compassionate soldier or do you want to be with the most ruthless soldier that is going to do whatever it takes to get you to safety? And they might have to strangle a guy with their bare hands, but like they're going to protect what they care about and what's behind them. That's the kind of thing that and maybe that sounds like a LARP or something, but these games that are played at the highest level, it is like that. And so I like it because, and here's the funny thing, if Trump had a dog in the White House, it'd be fake. We all know that's fake. All these politicians that, we have our dog on the Christmas card. Oh, hey, are these marriages real? Bill and Hillary Clinton, is that real? When they have a dog, is that they're all doing that for show? And so I like, because I agree with you, Trump is like a Don. He's like a gangster. At least it's honest. His dishonesty, in a way, is more honest than the kind of calculated deception that we get from other politicians, the pretense, the facade. Trump is what he is. It's very transparent. There's not a lot of, like I said, there's not a big facade there. And in some ways, that's almost more transparent. So I prefer that.
Yeah, it's a more of a what you see is what you get with him. But at the same line, do you feel like he does constantly lie to us?
I do. I think he lies to himself. I think he's a very fundamentally delusional person.
And that's a gift and a curse.
I think that's maybe part of his problem. Because when I look at Trump, that's maybe the part that scares me. Is I think that I don't know if it's his age or if it's the fight that has made him this way, but there doesn't seem to be a center. There doesn't seem to be a real person in there anymore. It's actually scary because I talk to people that talk to him and they say that he repeats himself constantly. And the way that he talks himself up in a speech where he says, oh, it's like nobody's ever seen, we're the biggest. They say it's like that in private.
Wow.
When he's on the phone one-on-one, that's scary. For hours, he will go in circles. Oh, we're doing the best job. Oh, we have the best this. And it's like, there's
an internal
something,
propaganda campaign.
Yes, there's something deeply wrong with him. And it's like a weird personality defect. And that troubles me a little bit because there's no center.
I think one of the most troubling things about Trump to me is I don't think there's ever been one instance where he said, you know what? I made a miscalculation on this. I'm going to own it, and we're going to move forward. Here's the right way forward. It's always fire this guy, blame this guy, or deny. And I think it's hard to respect a leader like that or a coach like that because the coach carries the whole responsibility for the team. And if the coach is demanding for you to give your best, to be able to be accountable to yourself, but can't do it to his own self, that to me is a fundamental flaw as a leader that he has.
I 100% agree, but what I will say is that he is a product of our environment, which is to say that he is like a delusionally confident person, and I think that in his heart of hearts, he really believes his own propaganda. I think that, I don't think you're going to get him behind the scenes and he's going to say, oh, I really did mess up there. Like, no, I don't even think he believes that. But we have created him because when you look at the media, when you look at his own party, are they fair? Did they call balls and strikes? Did they say, Trump really got that one right? He really did a good job. No, it's 99% negative no matter what he does. If it's a win, if it's not a win, they're looking for ways to take him down. And so this is a product of a society that is polarized, that is chaotic. There doesn't seem to be a real social fabric, a sense of we're all in this together. The media, the people, the rich, the poor, there isn't any of that. And so in an environment like this, only somebody that is either a complete sociopath liar like Hillary Clinton or a completely delusional narcissist tyrant like Trump can succeed. If you have a legit, like, I wear my heart on my sleeve, I fucked up, I could have done that better, that's weakness. If somebody does that, the media will say, yeah, they'll lay into him. They're not going to give him credit for that.
The media might lay in, but don't you think the people will respect an honest leader?
No. And I think that people have far too much confidence in the masses. I think the masses are ignorant. I think they're fickle. And I don't think they're fair. So what we get is what we deserve. We get the Trump that we deserve.
It feels crummy as a young person. You look at your friends, you look at people that are coming out of college or maybe they're into their career, and it feels like America maybe peaked in the 90s and that we're on this kind of decline. And we're all sort of aware that something here is wrong, but it doesn't feel like anyone at the top cares enough to course correct or to say, you know what, we have some difficult choices ahead. We got to do this with the budget. We got to do this with our infrastructure. It just feels like to make it in this game of politics, you have to corrupt your own soul to the point where nothing truly good for the people gets done.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, everybody feels it that we're on the decline, and people can have different feelings about why that is and what's causing that, but across the board, there's a generic sense that the best days are behind us. And that's because you look at our society and, maybe more than the kind of material problems like the economy's bad or there's crime, there's a spiritual malaise. There's like a spiritual sickness, which is the cynicism, the pessimism. People feel that nothing can get better. People have no expectations of anybody. They have no expectation that they're going to get a fair shake, that people are going to do the right thing. And as a result, I think then they don't do the right thing. It's sort of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So we really do have a spiritual sickness at the center of it. And by spiritual, I don't even necessarily mean religious, although that's part of it. I think that we really have like a problem in our souls.
What do you do as a practicing Catholic? What does it mean to be religious to you?
Well, you go to church and, you're just very conscious of everything that you do from a moral lens. So,
like, do you go to church?
I do, yes.
Okay.
And
do you read the Bible
regularly?
I do.
I do, not as much as I should, but I read the Bible and I pray. I pray before I eat, and I pray frequently about a lot of different things. But it's really more just living in a moral universe. I'm not an amoral person. I think a lot of people have this kind of therapeutic morality where they say, well, just don't hurt anybody and try to take care of yourself. And as long as you feel like a good person, you're a good person. And Catholics say, no, there's rules. There's a lot of rules. And so, for example, are you Catholic, by the way, or raised Catholic?
I would say I'm agnostic. I was raised in the non-denominational mega church, if you're familiar with
Okay.
Willow Creek, that big church in South Barrington. That was where we went as a kid. But I never really felt like I was connecting with the God of the universe.
Okay. Well, for Catholic, the reason I ask is because as Catholics, we have the sacraments. Mm-hmm. The church has the sacraments. And the most important sacrament is the Eucharist. On Sunday, we get the bread and the wine, and we believe that the bread is actually transformed into the body of Jesus, that we're eating God and incorporating God into us. In order to get the Eucharist, you have to be in a state of grace. So if you want to take it, you don't even have to just be Catholic. You have to be Catholic without any mortal sins. So you have to go to confession. You have to confess your sins to the priest. And only after you've done this can you get the bread.
Do you go to confession?
I do.
And you call him Father?
Yes.
I just find that concept a little wild, given the history of the Catholic Church. But I guess it's only 6% of the guys that were up to some of the shenanigans.
Well, and, much has been said about that, but show me a global institution of billions of people that doesn't have wrongdoers, abusers,
Of course.
Public schools. I mean, there's a story every week about public school teachers doing this. But anyway.
I guess one thing I really do enjoy about Catholicism is Catholics, I feel like, put the mysticism back into religion. Whereas the non-denominational people that are, like, they go into these warehouses, they turn them into churches,
yes.
They have their rock bands. It's a lot more of like a show and a production, but I like the symbolic nature that the Catholic Church still has. I like the symbolism, because I think if you picture all the way back to John the Baptist in the middle of the woods, eating locusts, having people come and he baptizes, that's a pretty radical person. And I would say very in touch with the land, very in touch with, I feel like Christianity has been turned to this point where it's almost like the guy on the stage is your vessel through God, mm-hmm. and you can't be as well. Whereas everyone has the ability to be direct to God. Am I hitting anything that sounds familiar?
Yeah, I mean, well, as Christians, we all believe that. That's why Christ came as a man, mm-hmm. so that he could be personal, he can be relatable, he's immanent, because the God of the Old Testament is, we can't even know his name. We can't know his real name.
He was a bit scary.
Yes.
I wouldn't want him as my next door neighbor.
No, it's terrifying. Yeah, literally trembling, and you can't look at his face without dying, And so Jesus comes to us imminently and says, take me by the hand. There's a personal relationship. So I definitely agree with that. And with the church, like you're saying, there's the ritual, there's the tradition. It connects us to all the history of all the Christian believers. There's something transcendent about it too. If you go to a church that's in like a strip mall with a rock band, or they're trying to put on a show, it feels like it's too with the times. When you're thinking about matters of life and death and eternity and the big questions about good and evil, you'd like to think that there's something that is bigger than what we kind of have going on in our daily life. Like church shouldn't feel like a rock concert. It shouldn't feel like you're at a doctor's office waiting room. It should feel like something eternal, something otherworldly.
And the Catholic Church itself, I think, does a good job of that. We're just walking into a cathedral. There's something that puts you into a spiritual place easier than being in a strip mall, so to say. And I think each side has their strengths and weaknesses, but I do think it seems like there's a bit of a revival in Christianity happening among the young people in this country. Are you feeling that?
Oh, absolutely. And it's because of nihilism. It's because we are maybe the first generation that our parents are atheists. Not me, my parents are Catholic, but Generation Z, it really is an anomaly because, of course, you had this apostasy. People were leaving the church after the boomers. They're going to sex, drugs, and rock and roll. That whole thing, the liberation of the youth. People are going away from God. They're going away from tradition. But we're the generation that was raised by those people. So, like, I have friends I went to high school with where they say, my parents are atheists. This is like unheard of a generation or two ago. Everybody's parents were religious. Everybody, whether you were Jew, Christian, Protestant, Catholic, everybody's parents were. So if you went away from that, it's very different being reared in it, raised in it with that language from the time you're a child and going away than if it was never there to begin with. And what do you tell a child? Where do we go when we die? What does it mean to be good and evil without the Bible, without religion, without any structure? People say, well, you die and then it's a big nothing. Well, what does it mean to be good and evil? Try to share and be nice to everyone you meet. It's not enough. And so people are saying, okay, well, what if I want to be evil? If we're all going to die anyway, if we're insignificant in the universe, you're telling me to be nice? Well, fuck you. I want to do something interesting. I think that's where you get mass shootings. A mass shooting is surreal. And people say, I kind of just want to do something that makes me feel the most alive. What if I want to do something that's completely insane? And what are you going to tell them? Well, that's wrong. According to who? You? According to my parents? According to my teachers? Well, fuck you. What's going to happen to me if I go and shoot people and kill myself? I'm going to die? I'll die anyway. And so without this kind of moral fabric and moral structure where you say, there's a God, we have to be moral, these are the rules, if we die, we go to hell, in sin, etc., etc. I think that people are really struggling without any of that. They're struggling to find meaning, they're struggling to find a grounding, they're struggling in how they behave. With sex, with drugs, with personal decisions, things like stealing. People's morality now, it's all like this socialist garbage. People will steal from a store because they say, well, it's a corporation, they're rich anyway. So it's like, what the fuck is your morality? The morality is like, don't hit people? And again, according to who? So I think that in the absence of all this, people are really losing their minds, and that's why there's a big return to the church, because people are looking for meaning, morality, structure. They're looking for answers. They're searching for something that they're not getting.
Do you think a lot of the Christians that we have in government, particularly on the Republican side, are fake Christians?
Oh, 100%. And most people are fake Christians. Not even the politicians think everybody is. And by that I mean they're going through the motions. They don't really believe. That's most Catholics.
It does seem like a good amount of Catholicism is like, this is what you're supposed to do. I can do anything I want Monday through Saturday, but as long as I come up on Sunday, I take the Eucharist, I have my kids baptized, then I can go gambling, drinking Saturday, I can do this, I can do that.
Well, it's cultural. I would say it's more, people are brought up doing that. It's part of their lives, and then that's just, it's another tradition, like anything else. It's like watching the fireworks on 4th of July. It's what we do. And I think that is really the biggest, you want to talk about how the world is changing? That is one of the biggest ways in which the world is changing. Because 100 years ago, everybody's religious and everybody believes that religion matters. Even if they don't really believe it in their heart of hearts, that's just the language, that's the venue that society occurs in. And now it's gone. And some people are still going through the motions. Most people aren't, but it's just not there anymore. So politicians, they have to pander. And I think that's good, actually, that they feel the need to pander. I like that there's at least an expectation that you're going to say you're a Christian. But even that's going away.
Nick Fuentes, do you think you want to become president one day?
I don't know. I don't think so. I don't know that I have a political future after everything I've said. Maybe I'm too provocative.
I think your political future seems to be the hottest it's ever been right now.
It's pretty hot.
Right?
But you're starting to see a lot of the pushback now. You know.
Yeah, and the pushback is largely from the system that is, right?
Yes.
Who's losing their power inherently anyways.
Right. Yeah, I don't know.
You haven't thought that far through? You can't say whether you think you want to be president or not?
I don't know if I'll make it another year, after what happened to Charlie Kirk. I feel like the next 10 years are going to be really unpredictable because society's really coming apart. We're going bankrupt. We're in the Civil War. That's just what that is.
You think, and to clarify, you think the local PD versus ICE, that's the Civil War you speak of, right?
Well, that's only part of it. That's an expression of it. You have, like, in Texas and California, they're racing to redistrict and, like, do super gerrymandering in the middle of the decade, which is unheard of because they want to get more seats in the midterms. And it's like stuff like that and the governor and the mayor standing up to the president, you're just seeing this, like, fault line just rip through all of it. Like, everyone going back to their separate corner. That's the part that scares me. Charlie Kirk gets shot and the left celebrates. Republicans and Democrats really abandoning any pretense of cooperation.
Would you say that was a small percent of the far left that celebrated, not most of left-wing America?
I think it was, there's, how many Halloween costumes did you see people being Charlie Kirk for Halloween? That's messed up to me. I mean, could you imagine anyone doing that about, like, George Floyd? I mean, certainly some people have done it since then, but everybody would rightly say, oh, well, that's not funny, that's reprehensible, whatever. But it's like the tolerance for it is unheard of. And anyway, he got shot by some nut job. People thought it was funny. And then again, like I said, there's not even the pretense that we're all going to get together and cooperate. In the Senate, we're in the longest government shutdown. The Democrats are shutting it down really for no reason other than to satisfy their constituents.
Are the Democrats to blame for this?
100%, yeah. They won't give the votes. They're in the minority in both chambers. And so they're saying it's about Obamacare subsidies. It's really about making their voters happy.
Yeah, because isn't the healthcare premiums about to skyrocket?
That's what they say, but that's not the real reason they're doing this.
I guess time will tell.
They're doing this because in the beginning of the year, the Democrats voted on a funding bill, and all their supporters said, how could you just give it up without a fight? So even Ethan Klein, or Ezra Klein at the New York Times, Ezra Klein said the same thing. He wrote an opinion piece before it started and said, you need to do it just to rally the Democrats. Shut the government down because that's just what we want. And that's sort of the thing is, like, there is no fabric the ties that bind the right and the left are just not there anymore. So I think it's a very unpredictable time in the next 10 years with all the added other World War III, the economic problems, the deportations, then coupled with this total political schism. It's a lot of destabilization.
Are you familiar with the book, The Fourth Turning?
Yes.
Do you feel like that's a true representation of how the cycles work and that we're in the winter cycle of the fourth turning?
No, I generally don't like rules like that because I think that there's so many variables when you look at a society. Certainly you can find patterns. And so you'll find these, like 80-year intervals or whatever it is. You'll find those things, but I don't like rules like that.
So you think the forecast for America in the next few years is chaos?
Absolute chaos, yes. I'm very bearish.
And would you say you thrive in chaos?
I think I do, yeah.
What's something that you want people to know about you before we sign off here? Anything that you want to tell your people out there, or just the average person that hasn't tuned into Nick Fuentes, what can they know about you?
I would say, what do I want people to know about me? I mean, I just wish that people would give my message a chance. There's so much that is said about me. I wish people would just listen to me in my own words and with some charity. I feel like a big problem we have is everybody assumes everybody's motivations. And I try to do the right thing and tell the truth and do a good job. And the people I have the most difficulty with are people that say, oh, I don't believe you. You're just saying that. You're just, they think that everyone is on the other side, or maybe from the far right, is evil, and they're just concealing their murderous intent. I think we have to start to trust each other a little bit and maybe have some faith in humanity. So that's, I guess, what I want people to take away.
All right. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. This is a series that we're launching where we do independent, law-informed sit-downs. I think it'll add some value to the channel as far as the ideas we can discuss. So I think you're going to be the inaugural one. So thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Peace.